Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here today because, well, we're tackling one of the most fascinating topics out there: human transformation. If you've ever felt stuck, like your brain is running an outdated operating system, or if you work with people who are constantly trying to break through their own barriers, you know for a fact that creating lasting change is incredibly complex. So today, we are going to break down two of the absolute most powerful methodologies used for personal and professional development. We're talking about professional coaching and neuro-linguistic programming, or NLP. And we're going to explore this through a really helpful overarching theme: upgrading the operator versus changing the code. Here is our roadmap for today's explainer. First, decoding human transformation. 2, coaching, upgrading the operator. 3, NLP, changing the code. 4, NLP techniques in action. And finally, number 5, the synergy of integrating both. Okay, let's dive into this first section, decoding human transformation, and really set the stage with our core metaphor. To really understand how these two methodologies differ and ultimately how they beautifully complement each other, we need to establish this foundational metaphor right out of the gate. I want you to think of the human mind like a highly advanced computer. Now, coaching is all about upgrading the operator of that system. It's that conscious, forward-moving process where the person sitting at the keyboard learns to make better decisions, set much clearer goals, and really take responsibility. NLP, on the other hand, isn't focused on those daily choices. It focuses on the back-end software. It's literally about changing the underlying code, that subconscious wiring that dictates our automatic emotional reactions and our deeply ingrained habits. Let's move on to Section 2, coaching, upgrading the operator. So let's look closely at the operator's side of the equation first. Professional coaching has this incredibly unique and empowering philosophy. It is a non-directive, client-centered partnership. And what that means is the coach doesn't act as a mechanic trying to fix a broken machine. They aren't a therapist, and they definitely aren't an advisor just telling you what to do. Instead, coaching operates purely on the conscious level. The coach treats the client as naturally creative, resourceful, and whole right from the start. They are simply a facilitator of self-discovery, helping the client unlock the brilliant answers they already possess inside them. Now, to actually achieve this, coaches rely on a very specific set of conversational tools. They use active listening, and that means hearing not just the words, but the hesitations and the silences in between. They use powerful questioning to totally shatter old assumptions and evoke entirely new awareness. Through a really grounded, reflective presence, strategic goal setting, and building rock-solid accountability structures, the coach vastly enhances the client's self-awareness and their capacity to actually take action. Basically, they are upgrading how the operator functions in the real world, navigating them smoothly from where they are right now to exactly where they want to be. And this brilliantly illustrates what traditional coaching is fundamentally all about. It is deeply, deeply rooted in conscious cognitive processing. You sit down, you map out your desired future, you identify the exact gap between that future and your current reality, and then you consciously make strategic choices to bridge that gap. It's a highly effective, wonderfully structured approach to personal and professional development. But here is a question we all have to face eventually. What happens when willpower and conscious strategy just aren't enough? You know the exact feeling I'm talking about. You know exactly what you should do, you have a stellar plan, maybe even a great coach, and yet you still feel completely stuck. You experience fear, self-doubt, or you just slide right back into old self-sabotaging habits. Why? Because up to 90% of human behavior is governed by our subconscious programming. And that brings us to Section 3, NLP, changing the code. This is the solution for when clients hit that wall of deep subconscious resistance. Enter Neuro-Linguistic Programming, or NLP. Developed back in California in the 1970s, NLP was conceived not as some dry academic psychological theory, but as a highly practical change technology. The core premise is literally right there in the name. It looks at how our neurological processes, the language we use, and our habitual behavioral patterns are structured in our own subjective experience. But more importantly, it focuses on how those structures can be actively, purposefully altered. NLP seeks to bypass the conscious mind altogether to access and modify those back-end subconscious structures that trigger our immediate emotional responses. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how stark the operational distinctions between these two modalities actually are. Where coaching targets your conscious cognitive processing over a period of time, NLP dives directly into subconscious patterns and habits for rapid shifts. Just think about the practitioner's role for a second. In coaching, you have a partner, a non-expert mirror reflecting your own thoughts back to you. In NLP, you have an expert guide acting as a highly directive pattern interrupter. And then, perhaps most notably, there's the expected pace. Coaching is gradual. It relies on iterative action over weeks or months. NLP, on the other hand, aims for rapid, experiential state shifts. We're talking about producing measurable results, often within a single session.
Section 4, NLP Techniques in Action. Let's look at exactly how we change that code.
So one of the most foundational techniques in NLP is called anchoring. You can think of this as applied Pavlovian conditioning for your emotional states, but instead of dogs and bells, we're dealing with human confidence and physical cues. A practitioner helps a client deliberately establish a strong psychological association between a physical stimulus, say pressing two fingers together, and a highly resourceful emotional state, like profound calm or absolute unshakable certainty. Now, to make it work reliably, it requires 4 specific keys. The physical stimulus has to be completely unique. It must be applied at the absolute peak intensity of the emotion. That emotional state must be pure and totally free from distraction, and the stimulus must be replicated later with exact precision. Once this is installed, the client can literally fire this anchor to trigger that specific state of confidence on demand. It's wild! Another genuinely fascinating tool is the swish pattern. This is a visual technique specifically designed to disrupt automatic, unwanted behavioral triggers. Let's say someone has a massive, paralyzing fear of public speaking. The cue that triggers their panic might be the mental image of walking out into a huge, empty stage. In a swish pattern, the practitioner guides the client to take that terrifying cue image and mentally shrink it down, making it dark and pushing it way off in the distance. At the exact same time, they bring a bright, vivid, larger-than-life image of their successful, confident future self rapidly into the foreground, often accompanied by an actual physical swish sound. By repeating this rapid visual sequence over and over, they literally rewire the brain's path of least resistance. Then we have parts integration. This is a slightly more advanced technique used when a client feels deeply torn between 2 competing desires. For example, maybe one part of them desperately wants the safety and security of a corporate job, while another part craves the total freedom and risk of being an entrepreneur. This kind of internal conflict causes massive self-sabotage. What an NLP practitioner does is bring these subconscious parts into a conscious dialogue. They uncover the positive intention behind both of them and guide the client to realize they actually share a much higher level goal. It beautifully harmonizes the psyche to completely align your internal resources. All right, moving into our final section, Section 5, the synergy, integrating both. Let's see how this all comes together. Let's move to and see how this builds a really strong case for avoiding the extremes. On one hand, a conversation-only coach might be incredibly ethical and fantastic at goal setting, but they're often going to struggle big time to help a client who is totally paralyzed by deep-seated subconscious resistance. Conversely, on the other hand, a tool-heavy interventionist who only relies on NLP might be able to create some incredibly rapid emotional shifts, sure, but without the coaching framework, they completely lack the professional presence, the partnership, and the day-to-day structure needed to ensure the client takes real-world ownership of their long-term outcomes. Basically, both extremes fall short of true, lasting transformation. The absolute most effective approach, and statistically, the exact approach used by the highest-earning professionals in the industry, is what we call the hybrid coach advantage. This kind of integrated professional uses traditional coaching as their foundational container. They maintain an ethical presence, they ensure psychological safety, and they always keep the client in the driver's seat. But when a client inevitably hits a wall of somatic resistance or a stubborn limiting belief, this coach has the NLP toolkit ready to go. With the client's consent, they can seamlessly introduce an anchoring technique or a rapid visual shift like that swish pattern we just discussed to totally break through that block. This creates both strategic external alignment and deep internal alignment. It's a real game changer. So the crucial point is beautifully captured right here. NLP helps change how experience is structured inside the mind and body. Coaching helps change how choices are made and acted upon out there in the real world. When you put them together, you aren't just giving the operator a better strategy, and you aren't just blindly rewriting code in the background. You are doing both in perfect harmony, creating profound, deep transformation with highly measurable, real-world outcomes. I want to leave you with this provocative final thought as we wrap things up today. Are you ready to not just consciously plan your future, but to actively rewire your mind to make that future inevitable? Understanding both the conscious strategy and the subconscious programming really is the ultimate key to human transformation. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning, keep exploring, and I will see you next time.